Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to kick it over first to Spartan Grown.
Thanks, Jack. Hello, everybody. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces, or you could shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com with all your cannabis growing questions, and I'll do my best to help you.
Happy to have you back. I just clicked on over to the live chat, seeing Rowdy 420 dropping a cheers. Happy to see everybody. And next up, we've got Matthew Gates.
Hey, everybody. Nice to talk again. If you don't know me already, I'm a pest management specialist. So you can check me out at zenthanol.com. You can also check me on social media like Sync Angel, the screen name for my Instagram and my Twitter accounts as well. Although who knows how long that is going to be around for.
You never know. I guess there's been a lot of talk about different social medias and things as of late with the whole Clubhouse redrop. I'm not on there, won't be, but we could get into that a little bit later. The American one, you're up next. Still muted over there.
Yeah, my mute button was stuck. Hello, Jack, panel, and everybody in chat. I'm the American one. Always good to be here. I'm glad we got another week together, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Just an update for any of the listeners who are with us now. I just clicked over to live chat on my phone. I've got the computer up. If you want to ask questions, you can go ahead and tag me at Jack Greenstock on YouTube, or also you could tag at Cheap Home Grow. At Cheap Home Grow is the best way because it shows up on my computer, and then I can copy and paste it into our Zoom chat. And if we don't get to it right away, try to do your best to hang around because we might get to it later, and then I'll probably reference you. And if you're in the chat, you give us more feedback and get your question answered more thoroughly. So if you do ask a question and you have the time to stick around, we will probably get to it. This is the four of us
for Matthew, Jack. If you don't have anything to start with,
not yet. Yeah, let's
Okay.
get it going.
Matthew. So, my buddy GML, he likes to get started he likes to just start everything when he gets frustrated and can't find the thing that he wants, and he just starts that company. So he is starting to get into the bug, the beneficial bug thing, and he told me that he's now sat down with 5 major companies, and each one is telling him the same thing about the pirate bug, the Osiris or whatever it is, the pirate bug, and that it's really only beneficial to use it in vegetative phase because in the flower phase it doesn't get enough light to make it effective in some way. I don't know what exactly that causes. I don't know if that means it's not gonna like establish a population and like lay eggs, or if that means something more. But do you know anything about that, like the light cycle that affects those bugs specifically?
It sounds like they're talking about possibly diapause.
Diapause, okay.
Yeah, so that's
Because-
when the season changes, the sunlight changes, just like plants, right? Photoperiodicity. So that sort of it signals to them, they have a physiological reaction to it, like their own kind of circadian rhythm. And so what happens, the problem with that, the potential problem with that is just that it'll make them go dormant. So if you have the wrong light schedule, which and I'm not sure which one it is off the top of my head for this particular case, but one of the two ones for cannabis, right, it's going to have that effect. Probably the flowering stage, if I imagine.
Yeah,
so
I thought that
could be why.
it was interesting because I know that there's big companies selling those bugs and recommending them in flower stage, and I think it's like they're just, I don't know if it's something they're mislooking or if it's like intentional, but that's fucked up.
Yeah, I mean,
no, it won't work.
Yeah, I feel like I think the best way to respond to that is that in my experience, especially a lot of the big name companies that I've talked to, they actually tend to hold it down really well. Probably thought I was going to go the different direction with that tone of voice, but actually, in my case, in my experience, I feel like a lot of them do crackerjack job. The problem is that it's just at scale, and so even if you have like 1% mistakes or whatever, that's still totals to like X many like bugs that don't get delivered, or they're late, or maybe there's something wrong, something happens in the rearing process or the packaging process that goes untoward or whatever. But
Or a
like these are
miscommunication in this case.
or
It sounds like
miscommunication.
it could have been a
Yeah.
miscommunication or misunderstanding. Like maybe they didn't understand that these people are going to be growing under a certain lighting cycle that would put them into a dormant state. Or maybe they feel like theirs in their experience haven't gone to that place. And maybe in certain environments, other things were triggering dormancy, or maybe they just, hadn't worked with somebody who is flowering under a different light cycle. Then maybe they
But I
were
will say
assuming it's going to
this:
veg.
the point that I was leading up to with that sort of long monologue, I apologize. But the reason why I was leading up to that point was that basically there is a pressure for all of them, despite all the nice things I just said. There is a pressure to sell, of course, and there's a pressure to, so maybe even the detriment that we're talking about, it could be that it takes some time for that diapause thing to like lock in, right? So you could still get some level of effect before the sort of torpor-inducing change occurred. And that's the minutia, right? That's the like, insect physiology thing that people might not always have or be able to appreciate, even the salespeople. Although a lot of them are pretty well trained, in my opinion. There's always those little details that, for example, and I don't want to go on too long, but I worked with somebody who was, they were still operating under an idea that like there were two different spider mite species, Cinnabarinus and urticae, which most people know as the two-spot spider mite. And so they were still using advertisements. They're still explaining as if they were two different things when in fact they're not. And then they were also suggesting two different products. And so in that case, that's pretty, people overpay for something they don't need to. So I don't like when that happens.
And that's kind of what I feel like with this situation is like, I know at Canico, we'd order them several times and put them in a flower room. It's like, that was a waste of money. I mean, sure, they might have done something for the first couple days, but if they're going to flip into diapods, that was a huge waste of money.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the plenty of times where, somebody is applying a specialist or a generalist when they need a specialist, or vice versa, and the specialist wouldn't even go after what they're attacking. That oftentimes happens with the distributors, secondhand distributors, the tertiary distributors. So if you go over with an insectary, I thought you were also going to throw me a question about raising them potentially too, because that's the other big question people ask me when they say, I've talked to like 4 or 5 different like insectaries or companies or people who grow bugs. Like, can I grow my own bugs? And that would be a harrowing process. We've talked about that already on the show.
Yeah. I do
So
have
while we have a
follow-up.
moment, I just want to pass it over to Dr. MJ,
Oh,
who
yeah.
just arrived, and give him a chance to introduce himself.
Hey guys, I am Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I am coming hot out of another show, so I'm a little bit sort of disoriented and like, but I'm here, so carry on. Happy to be here.
I wanted to just give you the update because last week I mentioned we were going to kind of talk about science, but I didn't get an article to you guys early enough. And it so happens that this week we kind of have people showing up a little bit later and some people showing up for only half the show and things like that. So I figured instead of getting into science this week, wait till next week when we have the full panel and I could get something to you guys a little bit with more time to review it before we go live. So
sounds good.
With that said, tonight we're doing a little chat Q&A. We haven't actually gotten any grow related questions yet, but Dog Doctor started us off with a more casual one that says, "How are you feeling today?" Which is a more general one, just kind of an update, but I'm feeling pretty good. Clear-minded. Things are going well with work and life, and I don't know, happy, healthy, and things are going well. Thanksgiving's coming up and got some good plans and have a little bit of time off for that. So looking forward to that as well. Thankful for health and my family and things like that. Cannabis plant, obviously. But Doc, since you just got here, I guess, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I was out of town. I went to MJ BizCon in Las Vegas and just drove back on Friday night. And yesterday I was feeling sort of a little bit, I didn't know how I was feeling yesterday. I started getting worried I might have gotten sick. So I was kind of like a little bit nervous yesterday when I was coming down with something, but today I feel great. So I'm like, okay, I was just like tired from like the experience, and my sinuses are probably a little bit dried out from being in the desert and then coming back to sort of a more humid place. So I'm feeling good in terms of all of that. And yeah, this is my third show today. So it's been a fun sort of day of media exposure, podcast exposure.
It's always good to interact with all the different communities, and there's really lots of great people out there. And these types of shows can touch a lot more people than a lot of the stuff that we would do like in person, or even like local events, or even like MJ BizCon in some cases. Like you're only going to see an interface with so many people there, but on 3 shows in one day, you can interact with hundreds or thousands of people at a time. So it's
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
cool to have that availability.
Exactly.
So we're happy to have you back, and I'm happy you made it home safely, and you are feeling healthy. I know that going from those 2 environments, I've done it myself. It can be a little bit of a shock on the body for more reasons than one. And BizCon is kind of a busy event.
Yeah,
and,
it's like a big crowded indoor space that you're there with, like, thousands of people. So if there's ever going to be like a, super spreader type event, that's going to be it. And then when you feel a little bit sort of sideways coming out of an event like that, yeah, you kind of think about it. But I'm definitely fine today. So good.
Yeah, after a few weeks ago, I went to a Sideways concert. They opened up for Revolution and Modest Yahoo. It was actually like a American Weed Co. event, but it was like one of the first events that I've gone to since like the whole pandemic and everything. And there's a lot of people in like a indoor area, and I smoked a lot of joints and was handing them off to people that I was around. So I was a little bit surprised, but came home and I was fine and healthy. And so I'm gonna kick it next to the American one. How are you doing over there, Tal? How you feeling today?
I'm all good. Starting to get colder where I'm at, which is good and bad. And but yeah, overall everything is pretty good. How about you, Jack? We already went through you.
Yeah, I think I already said mine, but
Yeah.
Spartan, how you doing over there in Michigan?
Cold as fuck in Michigan, but as long as you stay inside, you're all right. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's cold as fuck in Michigan.
It's great for
right now.
growing, but I've been seeing videos
Yes.
from Instagram and stuff. Like Buffalo got dumped on, Ohio, Michigan. One of the one I saw in Michigan, there was a school bus and they were stuck, and they had the kids in the back like rocking back and forth trying to get the bus to go. And it was just a sad state of affairs. I hated that. We got snow days when I was in Ohio when it was bad enough, but sometimes they try and make it work and it just doesn't necessarily work out. But
The
other than
snow
cold,
is
how's
annoying, but I didn't get dumped on too much snow. But it's the cold, man. The high was 21 degrees, and it's like,
Ooh,
don't even
it
get
was
cold,
75
yeah.
here today.
Yeah, like 32 would be freezing, and we're at 21's the fucking high. That's what we have to look forward to.
I put on a sweatshirt this morning because it was 56. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a little chilly. I'm gonna put on a sweatshirt so I can warm up in the morning, and like I'll take it off by the midday in the 60s, and then by the time it's 70s, I'll be wearing like a t-shirt. But yeah,
Yep.
definitely
I'm
one of the
used to
big reasons I
grow room
moved here.
temperatures. I want 80s, 70, 70s to 80s. I'm used to the grow room.
It finally
Speaking
got
of
cold
that-
here too, for sure. Oh, keep going.
No, just one last thing. Speaking of that, we finished the veg room in the build over at Bake Pones Build. So the veg room is done. I put that up on my story, and then so we got a veg room and a flower room done. So we can sneak plants in there pretty soon. We just need HVAC and electricity for lights, but we'll be sneaking plants in there while we're still building out, because fuck, that's all we need is a veg and a flower room.
Is there any actual sneaking, or like is this all above board, or is this going?
No,
maybe-
it's gonna
Yeah,
be a
please
caregiver
express
grow.
your crimes.
Yeah, it's a it's a caregiver grow.
Talking
So,
to
yeah.
the mic.
So it'll be fine. It's all on the up and up. It'll
I know,
be
it's
two flower rooms, 4 lights in each flower room. It'll be
it's funny to think about having to sneak around anymore with we've got a lot more legalities and protections, so hopefully we can do things
if you're an
with a
outdoor
little bit
grower,
more-
that's you still got to sneak no matter how illegal it is, because people want to steal your shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
Mhm.
Kate Armstrong dropped a great question specific for the American one. She says they were wondering, what do you call the male for Amy Aces, which would be a male cheesequake, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's just a male cheesequake. I don't have a name for him exactly. But yeah, he's the male, he's the father of Amy, and the mother is just my buddy found a seed in a bag, and when we grew it out, it was killer. So I took cuts off of it and kept it. And I don't know what the lineage is on that, but yeah, it's definitely a resiny one.
That's why the RB resin bomb is the
Yeah, that's the little
Indication
That's a
Yeah.
good name.
You've held that for a long time, right? You said like 10 years or something?
Now it's about 10, yeah. Actually, I could find out exactly if I go back in my pictures. That's the good thing about taking pictures and stuff. It has that date on it. which is great for stoners, at least this one.
I love that. I make little albums of like grows. So I'll like just tag the strain and then I'll sort all of them together and put it into a little section. So I can go through there and see like, here's when it was a seedling, here's when it was in veg, here's when it was in flower, and all the way through like the finished bud. And it's a nice little catalog. And when you swipe up on the phone, it will say like the date and time that the photo was taken. So it is interesting to look back through the years of all the different strains and things you've grown. But Matthew, we didn't get to you on the how are you feeling today, and then we'll get to our first kind of grow question that's not tau related.
Yeah, on that previous note though, got to be careful with your EXIF data. And if you guys post in your pictures online and you do have to worry about that kind of thing, sanitize that metadata if you can before you upload it. A lot of places do it on purpose, but not all of them do. So be careful, guys. Be careful.
Yeah, if you keep location services off on your phone or iPad or whatever, does it still has that data somehow, doesn't it? Or is it not?
Yeah, I mean, there's different kinds of data in that way, but I am not the cybersecurity expert that I could be and answer that question more eloquently. But right, I do know that.
I would definitely say keep that location services off if you don't want the location of that picture known to other people, right? Yeah, at least do that.
Well, here's the thing: I see people getting caught up.
Most people are taking these things on their phones now, so there are settings on most phones that you can prevent them from geotagging your images in the EXIF data.
Just as like a standard for all photos, you go in and you make that your setting, and then all your photos from that point forward will not have it. But in terms of like what the American one was talking about, or even Matthew with kind of the security and social media, one of the things that I see people doing that I think is kind of the most risk to their security is when they go on Instagram Live and they're driving around, even if they're not by like their house, like in their neighborhoods and stuff, like showing off anything around where you live. You're giving people a very real live insight to where you are. And unfortunately, like a lot of bad has actually come from that. So just, I would recommend against sharing your location in a live fashion, or even just generally like when people post the little descriptions above the photos where it says like, Kalamazoo, Michigan, or wherever. If you're at an event, like that's one thing, I guess. I'm personally like for posting after you're back home and everything, because if you're like, hey, I'm out at an event, people are gonna be like, I know where they live and I've been to their house before. Maybe they can go and check out your grow while you're out at that event. So certain things to be cautious of, and even like saying, oh, I'm gonna go on vacation. It's like good to just generally think of who and where you're posting those things to, because not everybody on social media has good intentions. So I guess as long as you haven't like doxed yourself, but certain people will try and find out our locations. Unfortunately, it's part of being like not like a huge public figure, but as soon as you start interacting with the public space online, you become a public figure sort of in some manner, I guess. And people really like cannabis, really like good cannabis. So a certain percentage of people are going to be out there looking to try and find who has it and where they're at. So it's I think important to keep a little bit of anonymity, as many of us probably don't use the full names or give out locations and things like that. It's a good just reminder and practice, I think. But on a non-security related thing, we have a grow question from Hacky Homegrower, who says,
"That's okay, Jack. I'm feeling great. Doing well. Everything's okay."
I got sidetracked.
That's okay. No, it's a. I would much rather you talk about something important like that. I think it's way more valuable to the audience than hearing about how I'm doing. But I am doing okay, and I will also say that, just as a reminder, like if you have questions, if you need things, if you're interested in really preventing things in your grow, whether you're a home grower or otherwise, please check out my my website, but also my YouTube channel for people. I don't know, I turned to an advertisement, but truly, I'm working on that botrytis presentation that I'm going to be giving hopefully in a week or two, and I'm pretty excited to sort of be producing a little bit more content and a lot more sort of writing engagements too, which is nice. It's nice to be able to do more creative writing, even though some of it is a little bit more informational. Being able to like continually kind of sharpen or hone those capabilities is something that I take a lot of pride in. I just find it very fulfilling to be a wordsmith. So that's how I'm doing. So now to the question.
I was very interested in how you were doing, Matthew, and I care very much about your well-being.
As was
Oh,
the
I
dog
appreciate that.
doctor. Dog doctor, who's a regular member guest of the panel, but a great guy. He was the one who asked. So, I figure it's good to do a little bit of a general update because if we keep it too serious all the time, then sometimes I don't know. People like to buy into the people behind who's giving the information, right? So it's good to
I
have
like
a
to be
little bit of that
authentic when it's
personal
safe.
touch.
I agree.
And before we get too dive into the question, my first picture I found was December 2nd, 2013 of the mother of Amy. So almost 10 years, not quite 9 years coming up.
Yeah, going on a decade. That's pretty impressive. I just saw Skunk VA posted they still are running the Chem 91 from 1991. That was essentially from Mass G. I think he goes by Greg. I'm pretty sure he's said his name and stuff now. But yeah, it's really cool to see like that. I still love that smoke. Chem 91, people around here still grow it. It's still fire. Not the greatest yielder, but very, very potent. Hacky home grower drops the question, says, at cheap home grow, for an indoor cannabis grow, how late into flower is it okay to use BT, Bacillus thuringiensis? And I'll pass that to Matthew.
Can you repeat that again?
How late into, or is it okay to use BT, Bacillus thuringiensis? I'm probably mispronouncing the second part.
Man, it's so unfortunate that the most important word in that sentence came in garbled again. One more time, 3 times the charm.
Oh, it's in my connection, probably. It's
That
in the
word
Zoom
was
chat.
flower. How long in flower?
Flower.
Yeah.
How long in flower? Not very long, ideally. Like with a lot of things with pesticides and cannabis, like, a recommendation from a respected entomologist that I respect a lot, Whitney Crenshaw, has suggested using BT products, a few different BT products, for like budworm moth, for example. And, for them, they could apply, if I'm remembering the research correctly, they were talking about applying it multiple times into flower, maybe past even week 3 or 4. But, that's because the budworm moth, becomes an issue even into the late harvest. So, like, if you don't have any defenses at all, it can be pretty staggeringly damaging. But for me, I'm very reticent to apply things into flower in general. Sometimes that's like the hard choice that you have to make though as a cultivator, especially if you need it for medicinal reasons and things like that. Would I expect it to give you negative health outcomes? I wouldn't. But at the same time, there are different BT products out there, and they're not all made the same. They don't have all the same formula. They don't have all the same additives and inner ingredients and things like that. I'm not trying to like scare anyone or anything like that when I say this. But there are certain cases where, like, I don't know, you work enough times in this space and you come across situations where even a trusted product that you've used for a long time, the formula changes and they don't tell anyone, or something gets into something, a contaminant perhaps. You have no idea that has happened. And I don't know, it has caused me to be a lot more cautious about where I throw my endorsements and things like that, just like with the biocontrol companies we talked about earlier.
Would you say 3 weeks into flower is like a pretty safe cutoff? I hear a lot of people stop spraying usually when the bud starts to set, start seeing the pistils shooting and flower. Like,
yeah,
like
that's kind of how I feel like comfortable about it. Like if the flower growth is very, very minimal, I think it's okay if you're just starting out. But like at the same time, that's also like one of the less vulnerable times. It's way more vulnerable, when things are getting chunky.
Yeah. Is there any efficacy to, like, it takes X amount of time for the fungus to even be effective? So if you put it in at the end, it's not going to have enough time anyway to be effective. Is that a factor or no?
That's
Yeah,
a bacteria, isn't it, though?
It is. BT is a bacteria, but it's true for other biopesticides where, like,
right.
They rely on a microbe, and a lot of times it relies on the microbe being eaten or somehow being ingested or getting some other way penetrating into the body. But usually it's through an oral route, and that means that you necessarily have to wait until there's some level of damage, you know.
Yeah, I don't.
And
Yeah,
you want to be doing it earlier, because like also with budworm, moth larvae, and other sort of caterpillars and things like this, what people don't realize is that the larger they are, the more resistant they are to the microbe a lot of times. So the chances of efficacy are way closer to like 100% when they're very small, right after like hatching. And you also got to catch them before they burrow into the flower, but that's specific to the budworm.
and the bacteria or fungus will stay alive for a while, persist for a bit, right? Most likely, or
Yeah, but that's actually a very salient point, because I think
right.
that it's hard even for me to really know what's the residual time. What is the resident time? Because like there are various microbes that kind of like their whole life is spent kind of at this, like, if you really want to be honest, kind of not very hospitable surface of the leaves and other sort of foliar structures, even the flower.
And
But
doesn't it
like,
depend on the humidity and the heat in the environment that the plant is in to
yeah, and
sustain?
solar, I would include solar radiation to that one as well, just like in
Yeah,
nature,
Like Brandon, for example, reapplies Bavaria bassiana every 4 days up to a point. And he feels like that's as long as it's going to sustain in his garden, or that's when he feels comfortable to reapply it based on his regime and things like that. But I would imagine, and it could be very different. I'm not sure. Is there any known data on like half-lives of BT, or like how long it typically stays around?
so in a way, yeah. Basically, because they're living organisms, they kind of, this can be very, very different. And also for some of the, like Bavaria, for example, it can, in some cases, it can enter into the tissue and live inside the plant to some degree as an endophyte, and even have some beneficial effects like priming the immune system, or even potentially like getting eaten up with the plant tissue and then infecting the herbivore. In some cases, this has been recorded in other plants. Similarly here, I feel like, if it gets into a nice microclimate, and whether it's a bacteria or a fungus, and of course there are many kinds of bacteria and fungi, but if they have a nice little microclimate, I think that's going to help them out. And if they are able to somehow reside inside the tissues instead of on the surface, all the more better, at least for some things. But for like direct insecticidal effect, it's kind of like your own body. Like, it's the disease triangle, but instead of for plants, it's for pests. If you have more spores on contact, or more whatever the infective propagule is, getting on or in the target, however that happens, it's going to be superior. It's going to be much more likely to be successful. And on that note, reapplication can be very expensive. So there's reasons why people would find that reticent. I think that Brandon's approach is probably really good for his context. And also, I would say that if like money or resources weren't the issue, I think that would be a really great reapplication rate. But it's also admittedly kind of laborious, it sounds like, especially as the scale increases. Yeah, so that's kind of my hot take on that.
I just think it's more to ensure consistency, because at his scale, like if you start to slack and
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. And if you're relying on it heavily, then you can't just treat it like a good luck charm. You have to actually apply it at a level and a rate that is likely to actually have
the intended effect.
demonstrably good effect. Yeah, exactly. Which is why that's so important, I think. And probably at a really high rate, or at least not a high rate, but like a substantial rate, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, he owns a company that sells it, so I'm pretty sure he gets
Exactly.
pretty good prices on it as far as like wholesale goes. But moving on from that, because I think we did a pretty good job addressing that question. We got a lot more in the chat. Smart Poker dropped a good question. They said, should I be pre-adjusting my tap water pH down before adding potassium silicate if starting at 7.5 pH tap for solubility? And I see Doc shaking his head. I'm going to pass it to you so you can answer that for all the podcast listeners.
Yeah, I would pre-adjust down. I do when I'm starting water like that. The sort of the trick with silica is usually will raise the pH but it's not very soluble if the pH gets too high. So that's why you adjust down a little bit, especially if you know what you're doing. It can be a little bit hard to know how much to pre-adjust if you've never mixed with that water before. But if you have an idea of how much you'd end up adding later, I'd add most of that at the beginning.
Anybody else have any other thoughts on that one?
Man, I just put the water in, add the silica, add the fucking base nutrients, add my fluff, adjust the pH at the end. I just never trust adding shit beforehand. I just never do. I just want to adjust the pH at the end and make sure it's right where I want it. But there's no other reason that I'm hard-headed.
Yeah, you can certainly still test the pH at the end. And if it needs further adjustment, you can fine tune the pH there at the end. But if you know now, you don't also want to make the water too acidic before you start adding nutrients. So you don't want to drive the pH down too far, but I don't think that that's going to happen with these scenarios that we're discussing.
When I was in cocoa, I was using like a pH perfect line where it's a little bit more expensive, but everything you just never checked literally 30 times. And every single time it was right where I wanted it. So I was like, damn, this is it. Whatever they're doing is actually working, because at several different stages of the growth, it always hit perfect right where I was expecting it to. And I tested several different ways. So I was pretty happy with that. So it is an option. People out
the
there
dose of
want to be a
pH
little bit more
down,
hands off.
in my case, the dose of pH down is very consistent. And it's usually the first thing that I add. So I add the pH down and then I add the silica. And right now I'm mixing sort of bottled water that I buy in bulk with tap water. So, it's not like totally consistent because there's always a somewhat different blend, I suppose. But it's consistent enough that I measure the pH, and occasionally now I'll check at the end, but I kind of know what it's going to be. It's just for verification.
I've seen like memes of people that are like 1 drop of pH up and it'll be like 7.5, and they're like 1 drop of pH down, like 3. Like it's like some people, like for whatever reason, maybe they're probably actually putting a little bit more, a little less, and like maybe they haven't shaken it, or like the concentration's a little off.
I think not shaking it. Yeah, I've definitely seen that happen.
It's funny though, because like I've seen at least a dozen people make references to that, and once you get it dialed in, RO water is the other thing. When there's basically nothing in there, the pH swings pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
So that's a lot harder.
We know that that's not RO water that he's starting with, because something's in there that's driving the pH up already, right? So
in Smart Poker's case, yeah, but in a lot of these other people's cases, a lot of people were taught or told, you have to use RO. You have to use RO. Like that was the Hydra way for a long time. Like you got to.
If you are using RO, I would definitely pH at the end, like Spartan said, yeah, Jesus, my mind just went blank on me. Like Spartan said, I'm looking at his picture on like computer. Like, what's this guy's name? I know this guy for like 4 years. Yeah, as Spartan said, because you're measuring pH down then in drops usually instead of in milliliters or like portions of a milliliter.
I have a question. How long, so I haven't been doing this because I'm in, my organics, and I check my tap water, make sure it's been 7 pretty consistent. So I'm counting it at 7. But if someone is adjusting their pH, so they put, let's say it's at, just for argument's sake, it's at 4, they put in 2 drops of pH up and stir it up. How long should they wait for it to adjust? Is it an immediate, or does it take a couple of minutes, seconds, out, half an hour, what?
Depends on what's in the water and how well dissolved it is already.
Okay. But
I mean, when we add a bunch of nutrients all at once to the water, I mean, especially you're using liquid nutrients, oftentimes you think like it's already dissolved, but it's not really already dissolved. And it's more, especially to be honest, silica, that takes a while sometimes to dissolve in and can continue to sort of alter the pH as it dissolves. So it's more about waiting for that than it is necessarily about waiting for the pH adjustment itself. If you have nutrient water that you mixed up a few hours ago and you just come back and pHing adjusting it, then you should be able to go pretty quickly after that.
Sounds good. We've got another question for Spartan Grown. They said, funny question when growing, let's say an indicanja. I'm not sure what that means, / super soil. Okay. Can you add your own fertilizer? I have some fish brew hydrolysis. I don't know if they spelled that right, but I probably definitely mispronounced it. And I would love to use it, but I don't know when.
So my first question is, that's okay that you'd love to use it, but do you have a reason to? What's the reason that you feel that you need to? What problem are you addressing that the fish hydrolysate is going to fix? Because I mean, it brings amino acids. So are you chasing nitrogen deficiency, or what's the reason? We don't just dump things down on there with no reason, just willy-nilly. So you have to ask yourself, like, does my plant need something? Is it unhealthy in some way? I wouldn't just go looking for reasons to dump more on the plant. I tend to do the opposite. I tend to try to avoid putting things on or putting less on and seeing if I can get it to get through it without it. If it's showing sign for deficiency, especially nitrogen, I would probably reach for the fish hydrolysate and go ahead and use it. But that's the win. That's the win you're looking for. When your plant's a little starved on nitrogen, that's when I would use that product. And yeah, you could use it. You could use it with your soil. Absolutely. And it would still be considered organic. So it wouldn't change anything. But
And it could be a microbial kick too. Like if you've got some stuff available in the soil that's not quite, or I should say it's in the soil, but not available to the plant. Some of the fish stuff can maybe help break it down and make it more available. But I totally agree with you, Spartan, that the nitrogen is the main thing that you're going to look into, and you get the aminos, which make it pretty available quickly as far as organics are concerned, because a lot of stuff takes like maybe a week or 2 weeks to break down, where that might be you watering it in and might be available within hours or days. That was from XX Lord Rec XX, if I didn't mention the name for that question. Anybody else have thoughts on the whole using fish hydrolysate with your own super soil mix? Tao, I feel like you've definitely used this in your.
I liked it. I've used it and I like it. It's really stinky, but
Yeah, it smells awful.
there's another hidden like nitrogen sink that is not talked about a lot, and well, at least I don't hear it talked about a lot in the like no-till organic soil growing. Is that when everybody's pushing, there's this big push to go more fungal. We want to have a more fungally dominated compost tea soil, fill in the blank. Which is fine. If you're going to do that and build a lot of fungals, you have to remember sometimes that fungal needs nitrogen to help it break some of the stuff down that it's breaking down. So it can really be a nitrogen sink. So another, like Jack kind of alluded to earlier with, it could be a feed to the microbes. Absolutely. If you're chasing nitrogen because of, that you just, I don't know, inoculated a huge amount of, I can't think off the top of my head what would make a fungal bloom, like
Manure.
Yeah, manure. There you go. Then you could add some nitrogen to try to supplement what that the fungus is going to pull out. You're going to supplement that nitrogen. So either you don't know who you're feeding, but one of them's going to take it for sure.
Yeah.
Like wood chips is another one. A lot of people like to do. This is more outside.
Yeah.
A lot of people would like to use wood
I thought
chips
about doing that
as mulching. If you do that, it's going to require a lot of nitrogen once that stuff starts to break down. It might not be the first year, it might not be the second, but third year for sure, you're going to notice some nitrogen issues.
I saw some people with yellow ass plants with wood chips, and if they do the finer wood chips, that's like really going to break down quicker than like the thicker, heavier wood chip mulch, because like he's saying, like once it goes in there, it becomes a nitrogen sink. And I saw somebody apply it, and within a year actually had some super fucking yellow plants. So
on top of that,
make sure to mix that soil heavy and nitrogen. Go ahead, Matthew.
Sorry. I just want to say that, with the mulches, you got to be careful what wood chips you're using. I always think this is sort of basic, but not everyone has been exposed to this. Some of these wood chips are going to be kind of noxious for your plants too. And mostly I'm thinking of like, pine and a lot of your aromatic softwoods that have like all kinds of, chemicals that are, you can get certain products that might not have them potentially, but they're kind of suboptimal for that kind of thing. And also on top of that, with the wood chips, especially outdoors, I've grown some mushrooms on, I've done shiitake on log. I've grown oyster mushrooms and king stropharia mushrooms, and it takes a lot of water too. If you really want to see like the best results, multiple flushes, really strong flushes. At that point, you're kind of growing the mushrooms too at a certain point. But that's okay, right? But it does take a lot of water, which is all the more like salient when you live in Southern California. So,
Yeah, we don't
so
get
Yeah.
too much depending on the season, water
I
wise.
was gonna say with fish hydrolysate, or if you have a really good super soil, I mean that's like kind of the definition is you just add water. But whenever I add anything, I tend to be really light on it. If it says use a tablespoon, I'll use a teaspoon, and I'll go like that because basically I'm hoping everything's in there. But I wouldn't want to dissuade anyone, especially like I would back up with and ask what's Brandon Rust because he would know more about that a lot of those products than I would, and he's all organic too. So, but the one additive that I know you should never use for cannabis compost is eucalyptus leaves. For some reason, they say it's actually deadly for them. But that's the only thing I heard, and I also heard that pine needles. Everybody thinks, oh, it's going to do something to the pH, but if they're old, from what I understood from what I've been reading, is like they're pretty. It's kind of like the coffee grounds. Once they're spent, they're spent. Like the pine needles are spent, they're safe. But like I try not to bring anything from outside inside, but that's like me. So
The thing I heard about pine
Yeah.
needles is they have to be super dry, and people will throw them in like a 55-gallon drum with like a weed whacker because I think even the sharpness of them like makes it so it's not really hospitable for roots. So they have to be like broken up so that they can be a little bit of a softer surface and broken down. It's kind of a difficult thing. I would only use pine needles if that was really like all you had available, and I think a lot of people are not in that situation, thankfully. But yeah, I've also somebody told me that that's a way to bring out pine in your cannabis, and I was like, I don't know. I've also heard very opposite things, and I'd rather just pick a pine strain and grow it in a regular old super soil, and have the pine strain stand out with piney terps, and not have to do something that's potentially going to mess with the pH and the soil structure and roots and things like that. So it's an interesting thought, and I know that I've seen a lot of talk about it, but we've also got a few more questions from Rowdy 420 and Okie Grower. Oh, and what about Bob? Actually, I skipped that one earlier. So we'll go with what about Bob? Because he asked first. Cheers, chat and Cheap Home Grow. Anybody got any opinions on transplanting early in flower? I want to flip to 1212 as small plants in 1-gallon pots, then transplant the females and keep 1212. So I'm thinking they're not sexed. And later on, actually, somebody, Okie Grower says, how long does a seed take to show sex usually? So I think kind of both of those go a little bit hand in hand. But yeah, so what about Bob? It seems like has some regular seeds. They want to flip to flower before they know the sex of the plants, which I've actually done this. And sometimes you get better ratios than other times. And you're going to pull out the males when you identify them, and then you're going to try and transplant the females. That's a little bit risky business in my personal opinion. I don't think that the roots are going to love that. I think it's going to
I
stunt them
understand why
quite a bit.
though. He doesn't want to waste the soil or the media on potting up the males.
Buy a sex test, Farmer Freeman,
Or
Black Friday,
just-
$10.
Or in veg, you want to keep them small, fucking let them grow up and take a cutting off the top to top it to keep your flat canopy. Put that cutting in a little cup of water, put a little piece of tape, masking tape around that cutting, and they'll label it, whatever plant it came off of. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then put that cup of water all together with all those cuttings in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tagged on it, and put it in your flower room. And then you can separate it that way. When those cuttings start to show you sex,
I
then you
don't
can
think he has a
transplant in your
flower room
veg.
already.
What's that?
I doubt he had. I mean, I think it's smaller scale than that. I think he's doing this in one place. I don't
You
think
could
he's
put
got
a cup in a.
separate place to
You could build
flower.
a cardboard box.
I
and
agree.
Put just a 12, just
No, and what
regular
you're saying
incandescent
definitely
light.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
But
even have to
yeah,
root is
I
something
think he wants to
that
go quicker
my
than
is
that.
also
part-
worth mentioning.
Yeah. I think you could do it. The point is you want to definitely transplant them before the end of the bowl. And I guess it depends on how much you're going to pot up. I wouldn't do a big pot up because you're only going to get a little bit of time to grow into that new pot, basically. And it would really, in
run
like
into
the
water
right
issues.
situation in a small scale enough grow where resources were limited enough, I could understand trying to pull that off. But I think you'd be better served potting them all up and then culling the males.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
big issue is you'd have to really
It'll take up
guess
a lot
the,
of
the
room.
next pot size just perfectly, or at least guess on the too small side, because you want to fill that pot with roots. And if you guess too big and you don't fill that pot with roots, when you water, you're going to get overloaded, overwatered and anaerobic spots all through that pot, and it's going to be a
Then, yeah,
nightmare.
There's
don't
really only
water.
two options as I see it, as far as common ones go. I would say a 3-gallon from a 1 because they're transferring from 1s. So I would say they're going to go into 3, and that's going to push them depending on the size of the plant already.
A lot.
Because I've done, as far as soils going, it's like a super soil if that's what they're
Yeah, I was gonna say, what is he using?
because
Because
cocoa's a lot
that
different. You
team-
could flour in a 1-gallon cocoa pot easy, no
Right.
problem.
Exactly.
You could stay in the 1-gallon cocoa pots the whole entire time. But if we're talking about soil, which I've done this, I go from 1. I used to grow in pots, and 3 gallons, if you have a relatively small plant, is just about enough to get through. They'll probably starve out a bit at the end. 5 gallons will get them all the way through pretty much and not be hungry.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the transplant thing, what Spartan just mentioned is going to be a problem where like the anaerobicness, the roots not filling out the entire pot. You're not going to have a good time watering unless like maybe you could try and pull off bottom watering to help,
well,
but
I had
don't know.
I had a batch of seed that were in 1 gallons. As soon as they showed sex, I put them into 5 gallons and put them right into flour. Same day I transplanted, I put them into flour, and they did really well. But it also,
So they showed
depends on
sex
the
pre-flower.
plant.
They showed
Yeah,
sex before you flipped them.
Yes, before I flipped. Yeah, they showed sex before I flipped them and before I put them under 12 and 12, which is different. But they definitely weren't hurt, and they seemed to like it was like perfect. It seemed with the using up all the nutrients in that 5 gallon. Like now I've gone to 7 and 10 gallons because I want bigger plants. But like I think even if you do, like there is a danger of overwatering, but if you just let them sit there until they need water, you could do that, without making it a anaerobic, thing.
They just don't grow as quick
They're
in
not
my
the same.
experience as
Yeah,
a
it won't be
proper
the
size
same.
pot
And it
being
depends on what
watered
kind of
and then drying
plants
out,
they
water and
are.
drying out.
If they're vigorous sativas, they'll, or if they're slower veg. There's so many factors, but it can be
Well, it's
done.
definitely, I mean, how about I put it to you this way? I don't want to say that you can't do it because I 100% think you can do it and get to harvest. But let me rephrase the question a little bit and see what your answer is here. If I would say, if I were to do the transplant right before I flipped, and then I did the same thing with its brother or sister right next to it, and transplanted it 2 weeks into flower,
Yes.
which one do you think is going to have a better
Yeah,
outcome?
you're 100% right. Yeah.
The one that was
That's-
transplanted before flip or on flip.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's not possible.
Right,
I'm
but
just
for
saying it's not
optimum-
ideal.
Right. You're 100% right.
I
there.
definitely think it depends on the ratio that you're going up to. I think going from a 1 gallon to a 3 gallon or from a 1 gallon to a 5 gallon is asking the roots to
Absolutely.
colonize a lot of new material pretty quickly. If you were going from a 3 gallon to a 5 gallon, maybe that would be less of a jump. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think each individual grower's got to figure out what will work for them. I do think you can get away with doing this if you decide that this is what you have to do, but I don't think it's what you want to do.
They're saying they're using bottomless pots. Oak Grower is saying the bottomless pot method to save on soil when sexing plants. And to be honest, I'm not even really sure what that means. I know what a bottomless pot is, and you could set it
Just
on like
stick
a
the
soil
pot on
bed.
top of a next pot.
Yeah, I guess. But like you could transplant them into the next thing, and then I guess if it's a male, then you could just rip it out and then transplant something else in there. But interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes different strains, different amounts of time to show sex. I mean, I've had some where it felt like a lifetime and they didn't show pre-flowers and veg. So
What's
I
the
think that's
earliest? What's the
highly
latest?
extreme.
What a number?
Think-
Like 30
Dude, I don't
days
know. It's
on the
been,
early
I've had
end,
some
70
go a
days on the
long
late
ass time.
Yeah, I never
That's
really.
why I've done the method switch to, I don't do it for every one because I still think, I don't know, what do you think, Tal, for you or for everyone on the panel? I still think that probably 80% of the time I pop a seed, I can get an idea of the sex before I flip it to flower. like when I'm ready to flip it.
I don't trust
I
that
can tell
anymore.
pretty early in
I've
veg.
fooled myself too many times,
No.
Spartan, to think that I know, you know. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'll be
like
like, this
20% of the
one
time, I'm still
definitely
taking cuts and
boy.
sticking them in a cup of water and just putting them in my flower room. I'm like, I
But
don't know.
so someone had mentioned once on Hash Church, it was actually Skunk Man Sam who said, you know, you could put indicas into 12 and 12 for like 2 or 3 days and pull them back into veg, and they'll show a pre-flower without getting interrupted of their veg stage, and maybe a couple more days if it's a highly sativa. But
But that might be his thoughts or his feelings, but that's not science.
oh no, well, yeah, it works though.
I
It
mean,
does.
the process will
I've
start.
done this. I've done
I
this,
mean,
and it can work. I've done it with, and
Yeah,
he
I
recommends
don't.
for
I don't
sativas like
like
3-day
any
dark
kind of
and then back to.
interruption. Yeah, I wouldn't like to do that, but that's an option if
How about
whatever.
this? I
I'll
just
throw it
sex
out there.
tested my plants,
There you
and they
go.
were in solo cups. I had 10 plants. How much are you willing to risk? Because one time I had 2 females. One time I've had 9 females. So it's like if you're in the situation where you're lucky, you get 9 females or whatever out of the 10, then you're good. But if you have 2 females, then you're gonna have to train things a whole lot differently. You're gonna have to use your
Yeah.
soil a whole lot differently. You're gonna have to use your space a whole lot differently. And so I love that I know when it's in a solo cup. Okay, I've got 4 females. I picked the 2 best ones and I transplanted them. Now they're vegging like crazy. They look great. And I haven't even topped them yet. They weren't even ready to be topped. They're so early in the process. They were literally still in a solo cup with just a few nodes. Like,
Right. That's what I was thinking about when Spartan's like, yeah, take a cutting off of it and throw it in water. You need to have a plant that's big enough to take a cutting off of to begin with. So that's some time there. I mean,
Right. I would say I never see pre-flowers before I flip. Like I don't veg long enough to see pre-flowers before I flip. So I'm always waiting until, a few days after the flip to check out my plants. Now, normally I grow feminized seeds too, but I just grew reg seeds and I had one male. It took me a little while to notice it was a male, though I was sort of like distracted by a lot of other things. But
what do you guys take on there's a theory that it hasn't reached sexual maturity without the pre-flower. Like it's not really ready to grow flowers yet until it shows that
there's actually been
flower.
studies that showed, and we pulled them up on one of our science things, that some of the smaller plants that didn't show pre-flower that were flipped when they were young actually produced like more cannabinoids and more terpenes and certain
I
plants
think
that were grown
that was the
longer.
one that I snoozed and missed. I think I missed that episode.
Well, the other thing was, actually, never mind. We got so many fucking questions. I'll let anybody else.
Good. Yeah, skip that. Skip my nonsense.
Not nonsense. It's just I want to make sure that we're
it's good those
entertaining
things come up.
the people out there.
I got a question for Dr. Coco because I can see him now. What are you drinking, man? What is that blue stuff?
Just water.
Oh, it looks blue.
It's like a weird glass that
Oh,
has
it's
like
the glass.
tinting
Okay.
in the bottom of it, and then this is throat comfort tea.
Nice.
I'm pretty, out there on the edge, man.
Thumbs up, man. I like it. What's our next question, Jack?
I'm
Yeah,
still
it's been
shy
all
about
day.
smoking on the show. I should smoke more. I got this cool.
You should. I'm lonely
pipe
on
here.
the
I
show.
got
I
this
don't-
actually as a gift from Jordan River that when he came to visit me, I was smoking out of. So
You should put something in there and smoke it. I'm sick of
It's-
watching Jack suck on that. You know what over there?
It's been an all day Dr. MJ Coco. I saw him on both those
It
other
has, man.
shows.
It's been a lot
He
of,
needs that throat tea. I know that.
What were the other two?
Smart
events?
Poker and Crispy Wannabes Sundays and Hemp with Gigi. Oh, I don't know what the name of the show is though.
Yeah, I'd call it the Hemp with
Is
Gigi.
it just Hemp with
Sunday.
Gigi?
I think it's
Yeah.
just Hemp with Gigi. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Hemp with Gigi and the Happy Cultivator are doing a big giveaway show today as sort of like recognition for passing their 2K subscriber threshold. So
Oh, very
Oh.
cool. Very
It
cool.
was good to see you all around, Doc. Good to
did
see
a
you.
bit of that. Yeah, it's fun. I guys, I enjoy doing podcasts and getting out there and engaging with people.
Yeah, but don't you win giveaways when you're a part of them?
I did. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's
during
kind of
the Last Prisoner
irresponsible.
Project. Yeah. I actually never claimed that. Jesus, that just reminds me. I've never claimed that prize. I probably should.
Oh my goodness.
I know. But
That sounds like
I
something
felt
I would
awkward
do.
about that. I actually entered one of the earlier giveaways that Hemp with Gigi was doing today. Had some cool prizes. This like grinder thing that I really liked. So I tried to win that.
Very nice.
The
There are some
wacky
pretty cool.
grinder. Yeah, some people have been following me around. Anyways,
It gets addictive, man. You can't do just one show. You got to do them all.
I had a comment just on the whole idea of growing a plant until it shows sex before flipping. And my first grow in cocoa, this was like a double whammy in the face because I was growing a super stretchy sativa hybrid, which was a Blue Dream replica from Humboldt Seeds. It was Fem. But I was just getting back into growing at the time. And I was, rereading some of the stuff. And one of the articles I read, it was so convincing. It's like, your plant's only going to be good if you veg it for like 60 days in veg. So I was like, okay, I'm going to veg it for 2 months, get a nice healthy plant, got it to a decent size. And I did that. And I was only I say only, but I ended up switching to smaller pots later on. I was in a 3-gallon pot of cocoa, veg for 60 days. Both plants showed flower. They're fem, but they're both female, thankfully.
Huge.
Oh man, they grew straight through the tent, like top of the fucking tent. Like I put up just trellis net after trellis net after trellis net, like, and now just they'd grow through it, and then I cut it out, and then I put another one up, and it was just a absolute disaster. I had too much light. I vegged too long. They were getting fed really properly and well in cocoa, so they're just growing insanely. It yielded insanely, and it tasted really good, but it looked like the most octopus, crazy ass, just spindly plant that was all over the place. Like it literally filled every centimeter of the grow room. And
jungle grow, yeah.
Shocked that I didn't get like mold because thankfully it was like a haze hybrid. But man, that was a absolute learning lesson that don't trust everything you read on the internet. 60
Don't
days.
trust anything ever.
Not all you need to veg.
What I was going to mention is if you're doing seeds and want to sex the seeds as quickly as possible, do not top it until it sex, because that's pretty much where I found that they usually show. It's like the second node down from the tippy top. And then when you top it, it seems like it takes even longer because those side branches were not the apicable. What's the word I'm looking for? That they weren't
Apical.
the top.
Apical?
Yeah, they weren't the top. So they didn't have any kind of hormones that would, or that's my thought anyway, that would indicate sex. Like then it switches everything, so it takes longer to show sex when you top them. Is what I feel anyway.
Only if you're waiting for pre-vet or for pre-flip,
right, pre-flowers.
sex.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to. I mean, I top my first topping when the plants are like 3 weeks old. And
right.
keep topping them.
That's the way I do. I don't care if it's a boy or girl. If there's 3 or 4, if there's
nodes.
4 good nodes, I'll take the top one so that there's 3 good nodes, which makes for 6 branches, 2 of which I take cuts off. Well, depending on everything, but I like to keep at least 3 nodes. So I take 2 cuts and have 4 main stalks coming up after that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That's a little like a tiny bit earlier than I go, but
yeah, it's earlier than I go too.
It's all different. Like sometimes the very first or the bottom node is like so weak, I don't even count it as a node.
I never tell
little things. Yeah.
I don't like the immature node. So the first node has only 1 leaf, and I never keep the branches that come off of the 1 leaf node. And the second node only has a 3 finger leaf
leaflets, right?
And I never take the branches off the 3 finger leaf nodes either. The third node has 5 finger or above leaves, and those are like sort of, I consider them to be the first. Like mature leaf or node. Right. So that's the lowest branches that I take, but I usually grow my plants out until they have 6 and then top a big top back to the third.
Big top. Okay. Yeah.
I go slightly a little different. Instead of topping like the plant in half, essentially like you're going from like 6 down to 3, I'll take the top off of the top when I'm at 6, and then I coach the third up. So you kind of get like the crossbar style where you've got the 2 tops coming off the top, and then the bottom 2 I train to catch up to basically. So you got 4 essentially.
Yeah, I call that a cross. If you keep both branches from the third node and both branches from the fourth node, you get like a natural cross, and you can train that pretty.
It works so beautifully. Like from seed, it's so symmetrical, and it just gets you really nice, healthy, strong branches with not a lot of effort, and they train in a way that fills out the area. And so
that's why I like doing it younger,
beautiful
too,
and simple way.
Because then those branches will be thicker quicker. Well, at least it seems like to me. I could be wrong.
Can you say that 3 times fast?
Probably not, but it feels like when you top them sooner, those side branches become more poignant. quicker than if you let it all grow and then take 3 nodes off the top. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're doing a really low stress top. I'm more worried about the sort of shock to the roots and the amount of plant material that you're losing when it's only got a few leaves, right? We're dealing with plants
Yeah.
that after the topping, they only have like 4 leaves that are worth talking about. And so you want to make sure that you're not sort of stunting the plant by topping it too early. You're just taking the very top, node growing material, which really isn't very stressful to the plant. Cutting the plant in half is a little bit more stressful, but it allows the plant to develop a bigger sort of root mass and survive that sort of shock of the topping when it happens.
Very good point. Yes.
Yeah, it's all basically about letting the plant get big and strong before we cut it in half.
And I do love that. Yeah, the first nodes generally I don't count because they are just such meager little. They're like, even when it's growing good, there's still really little twigs. The first nodes that come out of the seed plant. So you're right. I usually don't count that. A lot of times that one's like I take off, it's already gone already. Like so, yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
I always clean those grow tips off early, but I leave the single leaves because they're a good indication of nutrient issues. Especially in cocoa, you're very rare to get all the way through sort of the veg stage with those leaves remaining perfectly healthy. They'll indicate something's gone south with your grow.
So if I feel like we did a pretty good job answering that question, and Oiltown Oil asks at Cheap Home Grow, showed my garden a couple weeks back and was told to kill the runt. It's now taller and more healthy than another one next to it. Would love to show the garden update to get opinions. So it is about the 1 hour point. Maybe I'll share the link with the chat, and at least Oiltown Oil, you can jump in and show off your garden. I'll let you in. And that was a good question. And I do remember you from when you came on. So
I'm a big fan of the underdogs, man. Everybody likes to throw away their runs. I like to let them hang and see if they come around. Because like I was saying, that one twin I had, they were twins. And like I said, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. And by the time they were done, you couldn't tell which one was which. So, but it is, yeah, if you're doing big numbers.
I thought they were autos too. That was the other thing. They were auto flowers from my remembrance, but they can turn around just like anything else.
Oh yeah, I guess that's another factor. If you got a runt auto, I never experienced that.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was an auto flower, and that's why we were saying it was better to start over on that one.
Because a lot of times that runt ends up being the best smoke too. It seems like.
Yeah, usually the low yielders.
The lowest yielding one is the one you wish was the biggest yielding one.
Like I was thinking that
trip around.
Yeah, and remember in the beginning when Jack was talking about all the old strains, I was thinking that as soon as he started talking about Chem 91, because I grew that and I got rid of it because it was great, but it didn't fucking yield worth the shit.
And it's pretty floppy. It wants to snap over, like it doesn't want to support itself either. So it's like, Gorilla Glue will at least yield crazy. And if it's going to flop over, you're going to get rewarded for it.
Well, that's why it's good to have pollen around.
That being said, Chem 91, just the pure uncrossed version, is still some of the most potent, just awesome smoke out there. We got Oiltown Oil jumping in.
I have a question for the group.
Go for it.
But how much, I know probably most of the group doesn't work with males all that much, but like, just thinking about how I thought pop up my head that predatory mites, some of them anyways, will feed on pollen as an alternative food source. Well, in nature, it's also a food source, but I wonder how much male pollen you can get from just one cannabis plant, typically. A lot, right? Yeah, yes. Quite a bit. So but I was just wondering, because, and you can keep it and you store it quite a while, right? So you could.
It doesn't store well, in my opinion. I think fresh pollen is way fucking better than stored pollen, but that's just my personal opinion.
Oh no, but there's techniques. I mean, yeah, it depends on how you're storing. Like for example, cattail pollen seems kind of robust, but even it, you have to be in a pretty. It has to be a pretty cool refrigerator. You don't want to freeze it.
I did experiments with Velvet Punch with fresh pollen versus stored pollen, and like I did all the proper steps. And I just think that there's something about the fresh pollen personally. That's just something I'll throw out there. But
Was the
you can-
frozen not
Oh,
effective?
but I
It
meant
just
like as a
wasn't-
food source for the mites. It probably doesn't matter as much, but it could. It could very well. There could be micronutrients that are lost. For example, also you don't want it to go rancid. That's the other thing. Pollen goes rancid pretty quickly.
the pollen
Anyone
that I was
who's-
storing, funny enough, ants got to it and ended up eating a
Oh.
bunch of it. So it is a good food source for certain
Yeah,
fucking
it's all that
things out
protein,
there,
man.
insects. Dude,
Yeah.
they were so happy. I'd never seen so many tiny little ants. They made a fucking like multiple colonies in there. Like I was like, God, I have so many fucking ants. I'm like, oh, it's because they're being fed really well. And when I found that, I was not happy.
So,
Yeah,
anyways, that's one
also-
thing you could do with your males if you want to risk it. Is you can have a nice food source for predatory mice.
Arbico sells. It's called Good Bug Meal, and it's just pollen. They sell a bag of pollen that you could just add. They say to put it in water and spray it on your plants to be food for the beneficial bugs that would feed on pollen. But I was even just dry putting it on spots, at one point. But I don't know how effective or if it really is even.
That being said, we got Oil Town Oil
Yes,
in the
let's
house.
check
I'm going
out
to
Oil
spotlight
Town.
his video and make sure you unmute yourself. And it's already turned sideways, it looks like. So we got the full screen for everybody. Cheers, Oil Town Oil. Welcome back. Garden's looking great.
Hey, well, I wish I felt great about it. These ones are starting to yellow up in this back corner, but the run in the corner, in this front corner here, she's looking better than the rest right now.
It's
It's time
alive.
to water it, but it's these are flowering all pretty good. Pretty generic smell, except for this back one. This Sky Stomper has an amazing orange, citrusy, real gassy smell from it. I'm loving it.
Are they
What's
all the same
generic?
age?
What's generic smell?
Yeah,
Well,
how
the
old?
rest of them have like, I don't know, like the Gorilla Glue gelato is what I had the first time, and it's all very like just kind of very bushy still. The terps haven't really developed, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, very planty still, but this back one, it's like orangey, gassy, lots of like a little bit of lemon in there too.
How old are those plants?
I gotta look up the date. What date was that? I'm not even sure. I got the date written down, but
That's good enough. We don't. Yeah.
It kind of looks like the one that we were
Months
saying was the
ago.
run. That kind of looks like it's behind the other ones, like it's gonna flower for longer.
it's
I
the
also think it's
same
gonna
strain,
produce
it's this
less.
back one, surprisingly.
It sprouted up height wise, but like the side branches, the other ones have like 4 that are all relatively around the same top, where that one's got like 1 apical bud, and then like all the lower ones are
Yeah,
Not as
that
much
bud
to
might
be
be
spoken
one.
for.
That bud might be all bud that connects.
Yeah. By the time it's done.
I'm wondering what to do for these corner ones. Like my schedule right now, like what I'm doing for food is I'm just putting a little bit of worm castings, a little bit of gypsum, and then just water with CalMag. But I'm using like RO water with CalMag. And that's really all I'm doing. I'm wondering if I'm just nutrient deficient or need to just put more castings in or something.
how big is
Mm,
the pot?
It looks nitrogen deficient.
yeah, definitely that one.
The CalMag should bring.
I
some
would say
nitrogen.
3 of those plants look pretty nitrogen deficient. That one in the front right, it looks like it might be less or nitrogen deficient, but the paleness of the leaves on the rest of them, I mean that's what it looks like. It looks like underfed nitrogen.
Yeah, but the first plant, why is the yellow at the top and not the bottom?
Where
The
can you
first
show the
front
yellow
left.
at the
The
top
one
and
on the
the
left.
bottom?
yeah, bottom left. I guess there's
That
some
one
yellow
there.
at the bottom.
That looks pretty generalized.
What's your solution for more nitrogen?
Well, it gets back to how he's, providing nitrogen in the first place. It sounds like
What's in your media? What are you growing in? Is it cocoa or is it soil? Is it
No, it's soil, and it's like some weird Canadian mix that has like some black grass, a little bit in there, but it's like a Tex-Mex of a little organic from Lowe's, mycorrhiza.
The only thing I would give
But-
this late is aminos. You're not going to want to give any hard
Yeah.
raw nitrogen. Aminos will get taken up in weeks, and they're not going to be left around, and they'll become available and maybe help you get a little bit more of a boost. But at this point, they're going to fade. I mean, you're far enough into the flower. Like I hate to say it, but like the damage has kind of already sort of been done with the deficiencies that they face. If you're going to be able to hit them
If
with
you
a little
come
bit
in
of
heavy-
something, it'll help them get to the finish line. But
If you come in
Wait,
heavy,
how
with
old are these
nitrogen right now,
plants?
you're gonna stunt the flower.
Look
they're
like they
nowhere
still
near
have
as
like
old as
5
the
weeks
they're
left to
pretty
go in
new.
flower.
Yeah, there's still time to.
Yeah, they're still pretty new. They haven't been in flower very long.
At least, yeah. I think that
Definitely past the bolt. I mean,
talk to me about your water again. You said that you put CalMag in the water. Can you just talk to me about that?
RO
Oh,
was
I got
coming.
some of the stuff out here that I'm working on. A little brightness difference, but we'll see if we can get the hang. So sorry, let's see if I can get this off just for now. That's gonna air purifiers on. So right away, I
could just
got
tell
the
us.
RO water, and I go from RO. I put in the pH just to kind of lower the acid a bit. I got hydrogen peroxide because I go clean, and then I put a little bit of the yucca, just the tiniest bit of that, and then I go with this guy here, just the CalMag. And I was using this my last grow, but I haven't put any of this in at all. So
is
I
there
don't really
nitrogen
like
in
it.
that CalMag?
So what is the source of your
No, that
nitrogen?
the
Just the stuff that was amended.
soil, I think.
Yeah, that's got nitrogen in it too, 3%.
Yeah, but it's a time.
Not
What's
sufficient.
the NPK on that? So that the three numbers with points between them. Like, is it 1 0
We
0
got
2 0
301.
0
Probably 2
3 0 0?
300.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of nitrogen in it, but probably not enough. The hydrogen peroxide, can we go back to that for a second? What kind of hydrogen peroxide is that, and what's the dose that you're running?
Yeah, you
know what's
shouldn't need
interesting?
that.
I'm glad you mentioned it because this isn't what's in the bottle. I know someone who works in a lab, and I get 30%, and I adjust the 30% down to around a 15. So this is actually around 15%.
Okay.
Why are you using that?
So what dose do you use for that per gallon?
I'm using around. Oh, I got a little syringe here. I use like not too much. I use about a mil.
Okay,
what?
just 1 mil per gallon.
No, I'm using about 4 or 5 mils per. Oh wow, per gallon. Yeah, that's about right. 1 mil per gallon.
Okay, that's probably not gonna. I mean,
Why are you
you're not
using
gonna
that?
get away with doing much in terms of organic nutrition. Well, depending on things like compost teas and stuff like that way. But it seems like a mishmash of some different kinds of fertilization strategies, and I think that landing on a theory and deciding which way we're going to go with this is going to help.
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I think next time I'm definitely gonna try out cocoa and get like a regimen, get the right bottles and everything. That's been
I
on
think
your
you can
thing.
do these plants. I think you might want to start introducing that 1-part nutrient that you're using, because I do think that there's going to be a healthy dose of nitrogen in there.
Yeah,
And
you want me to pull it out again? I just don't like it. It stinks. I think it's too old.
or you can stop
I
you-
think it's
Is it
too old.
organic?
So you got to do one or two things. You got to give it some nutrient like that, or you got to stop using the hydrogen peroxide, because the hydrogen
Right.
peroxide is wiping out your microbes, which are trying to get you the nitrogen to your plants.
That's
Yeah, I don't
what
know
I'm
why-
saying.
You got to pick. Are you going to do
The dose
organic
is
or are you
pretty
going
small,
to do?
Spartan.
That's-
The hydrogen
it-
peroxide
you know,
dose, I don't think it's really going to kill much in this
Oh, yeah,
soil,
that's-
at least. It will kill
It
anything in the
definitely
water.
helps. It definitely kills things because man,
And
does
it's
it help
definitely
keep that
armory.
tank clean.
Oh,
But I
that's
do
why
not
you
like
keep
this
the
stuff. It's
tank
fish.
clean.
It
Yeah.
smells terrible, and I don't like. I feel like it's the wrong stuff to be using.
That is the wrong stuff to be using. I mean, with automated fertigation and hydrogen peroxide, because I imagine some of the nitrogen in there is being broken down in conjunction with microbial life that you're kind of nuking with the hydrogen
Yeah.
peroxide.
Okay, so you think maybe just reduce the hydrogen peroxide maybe a little, and then add some of that newt.
So
I can do that
let's talk
nutrient
about how long you're
fixing.
trying to keep this res filled with nutrient solution, because like that's probably an issue. And how warm is the water?
I actually have a nice chiller that I sprung
Okay.
for, and it's helped out a lot.
I
So the water's
bet.
actually even too cold right now.
Okay,
but-
don't let it be too cold. But if
But
you can
that
keep
doesn't
it at
happen
a
too much.
good
I'm in Canada
temperature,
here, so we're negative.
you
We're
shouldn't need the
negative
hydrogen
17
peroxide.
here.
Wait,
So-
say that again?
We're like negative 17 here outside, not in here, but
Right. If you can keep your water cool enough, you should be able to go a week between clean outs without worrying about running hydrogen peroxide, I would say.
okay, because was cleaning it every week, but using the hydrogen peroxide and getting the chiller, I was able to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna do another week, and just been doing like 2 weeks and cleaning on that second one.
Yeah, but using the hydrogen peroxide with the nutrients that you're using is sort of preventing a lot of nutrient uptake that is leading to deficiencies in the crop.
And am I honestly supposed to just dump this in that tank and have it just slurring around?
No, dude, top water that with a fucking hand water, use a gallon little thing, mix it up.
That's what I haven't been doing.
Don't
This
run that
stuff
through
is
your
just
lines.
Nasty.
Yeah, it's probably going to clog your halos more than anything else.
I drilled out all those halos to make sure they're just beautiful.
Okay.
You
See,
just
the
want the
problem is
biofilm
you're-
in your lines. The
The problem
biofilm
is you're doing
Yeah,
two
I had
things at
noticed that on
once.
my chiller, that biofilm. I'm wondering, do you think I'm going to need more adjustments here? Because I'm only running one valve per side for the two. I'm kind of just leveling them out up and down, but I'm wondering with doing like a higher fertigation setup with cocoa. And again, like my timers are only set for 1 minute increments. Is that going to be a problem?
Yeah. Timer, generally we want to have timer that can control in seconds. So, I have links to them in our product guide, but that's one of the challenges is to find a timer that can do granularity in seconds. With those halos, you want to keep the flow strong enough that like water is coming out of all of the holes, but not so strong that it's like, making cocoa or soil or peat or whatever fly around the inside of the tent because it's coming out like a little cannon.
Yeah,
but,
it's been a little tricky.
Fast enough that it comes out of all the holes. My fertigation events sometimes are like 24 seconds long or 26 seconds long or something like that. I couldn't go to a minute. It would be more than twice too much water on that schedule, at least. So it gives you a lot more granularity.
I wouldn't be afraid to hit them with like half strength of that nutrient once, and then just hand water through the top, like half strength, a quarter
don't
strength.
use the peroxide.
Just right now, I don't think it would hurt. It looks like he's got plenty of time to rinse through and get it out.
Is there anything, did I miss it? Is there anything amended into the soil that's providing nitrogen? Because if not, I think you got to go nitrogen pretty much every watering at this point. Not just like once and top
not
feed
just
and
once.
then out.
Yeah.
My battery's low again. This phone sucks. So if I cut out, that's why. I want to ask one more question about these red lights that I've put up. How effective are they? And I love using them. I love turning them on 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. How much am I boosting grow and anything with those? Like, what's the real science?
Is this 730 nanometers?
It's the two. It's like a combined of the both. Both of them.
What do you mean the both?
660 and 730?
Yeah, they're a combination of the two.
Okay.
Those
But
are
just red and far red, not like far red and UV.
No, just red and far red. Just an Amazon bulb. You can find it quick. It's not that bad. It's pretty good price.
Okay.
But I just grabbed one. I liked it. Put up a second one just to to really cover the tent.
And
But
so
they're only
the
on
way
for
you would
30
run
minutes
that,
depending.
if you want to reduce the SCOTO period, is you'd run it for 15 minutes to half an hour right at lights out. And then you
Those are
can reduce the
autoflowers,
SCOTO
though.
period.
Does it
Okay,
count with
like
auto
13.
flowers?
Yeah, if they're autoflowers, it's not going to do much for you. That thing about running far red during the dark period is to reduce the dark period. And it's a trick to give more light to photo period plants. One of the advantages of autoflowers is you can just give more light to autoflowers. So you don't need to
I'm giving these 20 hours of light and they're pretty high. I asked earlier, like, what kind of PPFD should I be hitting for these on? Because I feel like I just turned up the light and that may have been what yellowed these plants a little more.
No, they're being yellowed by nitrogen. Lack of nitrogen. PPFD, they're not getting enough nitrogen, so I wouldn't push them right now. I would probably be down
750?
no higher than 600 PPFD right now, just because hitting them more. So to that extent, you're right. It may be too
Yep.
much light in the combination of not enough nitrogen. So your limiting factor right now is nitrogen, and that's what's getting expressed. Turning up the light more when you're already showing a deficiency will just make that deficiency express more, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
get that.
necessarily want to turn it down either. You want to cure the deficiency, get the plants healthy, and then you can think about turning it up. But PPFD, healthy plants, you never want to see the tops above 1,000 if you can prevent it. Your plants are kind of tall, so and relative to the space that they're filling up. But yeah, you'd want to keep those tops out of the thousands, and they should be fine.
Real
So I
quick
can
before
pull
your
this
battery
light up a little
dies,
more. Should I just do that as well?
Go ahead,
you
Jack.
can
I
move the
didn't
light
hear
up or you could dim it. Either one will work. But before you go, we were talking about your nitrogen issue, and you mentioned that you had a soil. I heard something about frass. I heard something about castings. Is there any like compost in there or any other nitrogen input that would be providing any nitrogen source?
I can't think of any. I'm just putting the castings, just some like super soil generic with some organic from Lowe's. What should I be adding in there for any more
Well,
nitrogen?
You're not really giving us specifics. If you could go to the bag and we could look at the ingredients in those soils, we would know.
I know what I threw the bag out recently. I can see if I can grab some information and post it in the chat of what it was. It's some weird Canadian brand with some black frass in it. That was the.
I think we lost them, but we do have the dog doctor who joined us while we were talking to Oil Town Oil, whose phone likely died. So I'm going to go to I'm going to remove Spotlight, and then I'll go ahead and spotlight probably the dog doctor because he's over here with us. Welcome back, dog doctor. How you doing?
First love, everybody. Glad everybody's feeling okay.
Good to
Was
see
a
you, buddy.
nice meeting you too. Thank you for having me. Looking great.
Good to see you, Doc.
You too, buddy. Let me change this around. We were talking about the top plants. So the almost dead
I
thing.
switched over
I
to
have
joints to make Spartan happy.
I have to
I got
use
if you smoke,
this.
you're gonna be happy.
I have to use this to work on this. Look at the size of this thing. Dude.
Holy
Good lord,
Jamma
bro.
Jamma.
Oh yeah.
That's like a flowered out.
Dude.
That's like
My
a flowered out
blue
mother plant.
Dream was like that, but like another one of the tops on top of it. Imagine like all of
Dude,
the plant
I'm
that was there
trying to
times
go
2.
all the way too far.
Hey,
Yeah,
dog
man.
doctor, can you zoom in on one of the buds or one of the stalks? Yeah, so that the one to the right of
This
this one.
one,
Oh no, sorry,
No,
probably
this-
to your left. Yeah, down the other way, other
That.
direction. Yeah. Are there some with leaves that are kind of like pointed down? Am I seeing some, or is it just the orientation of the? Okay. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was seeing like this. Yeah, I think it's just how the leaves are curving. It's very pretty, but for a moment I thought it might have been like, I didn't know the color and the quality is a little bit grainy. I just wanted to save you a hassle in case there was something weird, but you can totally see these buds. You probably would have seen that. Anyways,
oh, bugs? No, bugs. I don't see any for now. Not even trips in here.
Looks good.
well, I thought it might have been like a
I have
Which is
this, the
Try it, that's
Ultimate
right, Matthew.
here,
yeah,
and
something
the
like that.
Butter on.
Swarovski. I have
Very
this
nice.
here, and the Swarovski there to help. And they suffered like middle last week GML show. One of the lights stopped. I had to change the light, which was a good thing, because this one here was already burned, but
Yeah.
I guess it's fully recovered. Then no
Mhm.
burns anymore. He recovered, but it was getting yellow. So, but I have no more space. Like I cannot go upper than this.
Can you bend it down at all and just sort of move it away towards the middle
Yeah.
of the tent where there is no light?
No, not the middle, because in the middle I have where they have
Other two
the
other
hires.
ones.
So
Yeah.
what I did is I put it to the side and I put like this, and it is what it is, dude. This is way bigger
be
than it
fine.
was supposed.
You're gonna be fine.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
this
hey,
is
yeah.
this is the epitome of a good problem to have.
Yeah.
plants
Yeah,
grow
I'm
too
not
big.
complaining. But she came from a smaller plant in here. This is looking great, by the way, also.
How much water does she drink a day? Yeah, that's
Ooh.
nice right there.
Which
first
one? This one or the other one? The first
The
one.
first one. Yeah.
I'm giving them every 2 days, each one 6.5 liters.
Nice. Nice. Over a gallon.
This is
Ooh, let's check your yellow
A
sticky
4x4,
card.
25
two
liters.
plants. Yeah.
Oh,
Sticky card update.
Yeah.
will this give CO2 to my plants?
Maybe,
You have an
but I don't
exhaust
sure.
fan?
It's like
Yeah. It's kind
Okay.
of CO2 is heavy, so it's gonna stay down there, right?
Well,
no,
you
I-
got the air flowing around. It's just
Oh,
going to
there
get
we go.
exhausted out
Yeah.
I
eventually.
have that going up
Yeah.
there, and I have this side there, so this will make kind of like this.
Oh, okay.
But
So,
you,
But,
how do you control humidity?
in here
Yeah.
by exhausting.
Okay, then that's going to suck all the CO2 out of there. You're not going to effectively raise the concentration of CO2 in that tank.
Okay. Oh, no, it's not there for that. Anyway, it's just I need a place for it. I don't even know how much light it does need, but
Matthew was asking to see the yellow sticky card.
yellow sticky card.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah, let's get a sticky card
he's
update.
salivating on his keyboard right now.
Exactly.
I have a fungus nets. I
Uh-huh.
have dusts. I
Not
have
bad.
Not the worst I've seen.
Yeah.
three fungus nets over here.
What grade does he
Check.
get, Matthew?
Let
I
me
think,
check here. I have 1, 2, 3 in this one, and 1, 2. That's what I have.
I say low threat. That's good. That's a good place to be.
The blue one. That's a bit of the leaf.
I feel like it's a pass fail kind of thing with this, and I'd say that's a pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. For now, not complaining on the pest department.
Yeah, it looks really
Starts-
nice.
Oh, you're crushing it, man.
Everything's looking happy,
A lot of
yeah.
people would be very happy to have those 2 plants that you just showed off, or those 2 tents. Very thick,
Yeah.
healthy, robust.
Well done.
Thank you very much. This one, I'm really in love with this one. I think I will have to. What? Sorry.
What plant is that?
Yeah, what is this?
This, it's the Amsterdam Amnesia at Dutch Passion.
Say that again.
I'm-
It's photo.
It's
Amnesia.
photoperiodic, yeah. It's a photoperiodic. Yeah.
Amsterdam amnesia.
Yes, sir.
Photo period. Yeah.
And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more days for her to go, and after I 4 or 5 maximum I have to harvest, because then I have 8 to 10 days until the contest is finished, so I have to have her finished. So, but I have clones of her. I will run her for over 70 days. That's what she's gonna do. Still,
Looking nice. Very dense.
it's,
Indeed.
I don't know, but it's really, really okay call. It's like,
Did
okay,
amnesia
happy.
get overgrown at all where you were at? Because I know I was listening to a thing about Old Timer One the other day from when he passed as a tribute to him. It was Golden Syrup and Chilbert. Shout out to Chilbert UK, who's in the chat tonight. They're talking about a lot of the strains over there. And amnesia was one that kind of got run so much, as well as like Star Dog and the UK cheese, that were so popular that they just kind of like got sort of blue dreamified, I'd say, where they were so popular they became unpopular because it was all people had, and the quality ended up going down.
So yes, sir. I'm really have high expectations for this one because was something I used to love back in like end of the 90s, maybe. I think maybe early 2000s. I don't know when the hype came for it. But
It was the late
dude,
90s.
Yeah, it was something like that, I think. And I remember that sweetness, gassy taste, I think, with keep me going and going and going. I would party with this. I would work with this. I would not work because I would not work at that time, but it would just keep me going.
Get
And,
chores done is what I interpreted that to mean. But yeah.
So let's see. And she smells amazing, but it's I don't like touching so much, but I don't know. It's almost like gasoline.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely attractive.
Dude, it's crazy. It's really and just. I don't know if you noticed what I did. I pretty much did this to it, and
It's just very very terpenous, right? Very like
Yes.
Almost like
Yes.
there's literally like a haze, right? No, not a miasma. That would be a bad thing. But like a fog, almost a mist. You know,
Sure.
kind of like all of those volatile. I do like that feeling a lot. That's one of the things I like about even other plants. When you can just like like mints and things like that, where you just blow past them, you rub on them, and they're just like everywhere. I like that
Is there
perfume.
enough light here?
Definitely.
I don't know if you saw it on Instagram, that brown, beautiful plants that I posted a few days ago. And actually, I'm still posting her buds, dude. This is one single plant. This was the one with all the bugs and all the problems and all the deficits and everything. And
What's your yield like?
For this one,
typically?
I have no. Normally, I'm going close to 2 grams a watts. 198, 190. On here, on here. On the autos, I cannot say the average because some autos are giving me numbers 200 and something grams. Other autos are giving me close to 100. So I don't know if I don't control them. In here, as long as I can fill up the spaces, it goes about close to 2 grams, 2 grams a watt. I'm pretty happy actually with the 2 small spaces.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's
per square foot or per square meter.
This is it's not
The
even
3 by
a
3,
square.
right?
This it's 0.9. It's a 3 by 3, I think so. It's 0.9 of a 0.9. It's a little bit less than a meter.
Okay.
This one is a 1.2, 1.2, which is a 4 by 4, I think.
Right.
In here, I have 200 watts. Yes, Viber
Just
Spectra.
200 watts in that tent total?
Yes, sir. Total.
Okay.
And
That's pretty
it's
good plant for
giving
200 watts. I mean, and a really good sort of return. You could probably put more light on them. Do you know what you're running at PPFD or what you expect to be running in terms of PPFD through there?
I can check my notes actually and see what they are, but they are going
What
in
light is
here.
that? Is that a Viper Spectra or what is
Yes,
that?
sir. It's a Viper Spectra. In here, I'm getting really high numbers, like 1,000 and something. Center, it goes around 800, 900. In the edges, it goes down to 300 here, something like this.
Yeah.
So, but I try not to grow here. There's one that went there, but I try to keep it like this.
It's not really about where the colas are. It's just it's the same plant, and it's how much energy it's going to be able to harvest in total. So yeah, you could put a little bit more light in there. I mean, you're killing it. That's a beautiful plant. I'm just and
Thank you.
Thinking about the returns there. You could get probably more returns to square foot or to square meter, but it would come at the cost of the grams per watt number that you're dealing with, basically. But
so you would risk 400 watts in such a small place?
No, about 300
300?
generally. 300 well-distributed watts, getting about 2.2 to 2.4 micromoles per joule.
For instance,
Is
put this over there, the Mars
what is
Hydro,
that?
the TSW
DS something.
Yeah,
to
so the TS3000.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this
Yes,
is the TS3000. It's lower efficiency but higher power. That's not that much lower than the P series from Viper Spectra. I'd probably run that. Yeah, you'd get more coverage and a little bit more power, a little bit more sort of light out of it. For
Because I feel for the 4x4, I was using that plus the Spider Farmer to get a good coverage. Now I have to use it here.
I would say this: you're gonna get more yield with that other light. That's like the 300, but you're not gonna be hitting 2 grams per watt. Would be my guess. Your gram per watt will go down, but your yield will go up. And I've seen, I've literally done
your
exactly
yield.
that.
Your yield per square foot will go up, but your yield, your returns to electricity will go down because you're just adding more electricity to drive up your coverage. So you always have to be aware of what you want to optimize to. Do you want to maximize to electricity and have the most efficient grow that way, which gives you like a little bit of light and a lot of room? Or do you want to maximize your returns to space, like grow as much as you can in your 3x3 or in your 4x4? Those are different calculations.
I want to grow the highest quality terpene profile that I can get with the best taste. I don't care so much about the weight, because it's everything is for me. So I value more that than anything else in the world. If I can get more weight, better, of course, because but I wouldn't want to compromise the quality over weight ever.
Yeah, I think the main things you're looking for are distribution and, you know, the right amount of light. And I think you could get a little bit better in a 3x3 tent than with the 200 watt. Is that the P2000?
This is
was in a tent half the size once upon a time, and I ran so much light, but you can get crazy returns and have it be really terpy, really potent bud. Like my biggest yield ever was my best smoke. So I think that it's a misnomer that it has to be a small cookie type yield to be good smoke, when there's some stuff that will return well and you can run a little bit more light and still have it be like, look at any of Brandon Russ's rows. They're not underlit at all. And his shit is terpy as hell, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So
I really believe that to get the highest quality, you should be fully lit.
I agree.
Genetics. If you have
it's
good
a combination
genetics,
for sure.
Yeah. That's for sure. You want to see babies? Not much to see, but please, sorry, I interrupt you. These are really babies. This is a Somango. These are autos. Somango glue.
That plant is suffering from, it looks like, a calcium issue.
It's calcium? Okay. She's very small.
Generally, when we see those the first leaves grow in like that, it's I'm not even sure if that's calcium or not. It's deficient on something, but yeah, I mean, if that was cocoa, I would be all over calcium deficiency.
It's soil, and I actually gave it CalMag today.
What's that?
It's in soil, and I actually water with the CalMag today, but
okay, it might just be too much of something. It might be that you're providing too much EC for young roots, and that's
it was the it was the first time I gave her anything. She has 4 days, maybe 3 days.
Is there cocoa in that blend?
No, there's a little bit of mix. It's cocoa with soil and
so there is cocoa.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's probably calcium deficiency from the cocoa.
Okay. This one is a day younger, but I think she won't. She's very slow, very, very slow coming out. Yeah. It's a banana purple punch, and I don't like what's coming in. This one is the only one that actually it's coming out okay.
Don't give up on the short one.
I don't give up on anything. I have one here that didn't pop, and I'm not giving up on anything. She's in there.
When you filled up these pots, Dog Doctor, did you compress it at all, or just let it fill its natural way? Like how stuffed, is it tight, loose?
It's kind of loose. I don't like to press it too much in the beginning, and I let it absorb a little bit of water down, and then when I put the seeds from the glass of water, in this case I use a cotton, which I don't like, but I don't know what I used, but I used. I just squeezed water on top, and I just put just like a little bit of soil so that they don't have to do anything.
Okay, it looks a little bit muddy. Yeah,
it looks wet. It doesn't mean it is wet.
The one that's on the far back left that kind of had, I was saying, a calcium thing. To me, it looks like it might have had the roots might not be the happiest. Like maybe they're a little bit too wet, or just that mix doesn't seem. That looks pretty chunky for a seedling mix. I don't know how.
It's not a seedling mix. It's a normal mix. I just put a little bit of cocoa in it.
Be sure to buffer your cocoa. I'm pretty confident that those symptoms that you're seeing in that plant is from unbuffered cocoa.
Do you have some sort of airflow going through there?
So go back to that plant, you can give it a CalMag foliar, will help that plant recover from those calcium deficiency issues too. So mix up a little bit of water with some CalMag additive. and it should just be above 6.2 pH. The electrical conductivity can be about like 1.5 or so. You don't have to make very much, and you can dose it by electrical conductivity because all you're adding is CalMag, and spray that with that plant, until symptoms improve. But you can do it as often as you think of it. Basically, to a plant that's that size, it will definitely help the plant, recover from those symptoms.
Just water, plain water with CalMag.
Plain water. Yeah, if you have a wetting agent, it helps. So plain water, wetting agent, and CalMag solution until your EC is about 1500 or 1.5. Verify that your pH is above 6.2 and spray that on your plant.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And those are the amnesias waiting.
Are those clones or are those?
Yeah. No, those are
seed?
clones. Yes, I just transplanted them today into this here. These are from clones from that one that is flowering over there. That I think that's
Oh, it's
gonna
nice to have
finish.
backups, especially when it's fire.
Oh man, one thing I learned is always to have backups. Normally, when I don't have backups, they turn out really good, really nice on me. This is one of the things I'm trying to learn on the autoflowers, is to enjoy the moments and no regrets, living in the moment.
I will make one suggestion.
Please.
With the sachets, good use of them, the bags.
Sir? Yes.
For the predatory mites. Good. This is a good application, but in a lot of cases, it's recommended that you get closer to the core, closer to the heart of the plant. And I see that you've sort of done this here. Mainly the less light, and maybe in this case it's a little bit less important.
So
but like
you mean from here to the insides?
Yeah, like closer to the trunk of the plants, or in this case, possibly even closer to the leaves. Kind of like just under the canopy, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That's why I'd like to put mine right underneath the first branch that has foliage on it, because they come right out and go right onto where the bugs would be. The bugs aren't on the stems; they're on the leaves usually. So yeah, that's where I put it, right there. Yep.
Like that one, okay. Actually, this one was the only one. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, no problem.
They are here for you. You were the one advising me for this. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad that's been helpful.
Oh, very helpful. You all are.
So you said that it smelled earlier like diesel, and this is a pretty good article. I don't love everything that Leafly has, but they went through like 5 strains that smell heavy of gas or fuel. And the most common 5 terpenes are limonene, caryophyllene, pinene, humulene, and myrcene, found in other strains. And you could see the different breakdowns with these little infographics, like lots of caryophyllene. There's bits of linalool, myrcene, but big spikes in the limonene and humulene. There's also other stuff like esters and aldehydes that aren't listed here, but it's at least a good start, and maybe some of the stuff that you might be smelling on that amnesia. So good little article. For anybody who's curious, it's called 5 Cannabis Strains for People Who Love Diesel Terpenes, and it's found on leafly.com. And yeah, I feel like it's a cool little infographic. But with that being said, we're coming up to the 5:45 hour here on the West Coast, and Spartan Grown's got to take care of his dogs, refill his trays, get some to drink and all that good stuff before he heads on over to the Michigan Grow Show. But any final thoughts and shout outs from you this week, Spartan?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, just thanks for having us. Another show. This I think is probably one of our more consistent shows. I like that we don't really miss a show. That's fucking awesome to me. And we've been doing it for so long, so it's always great to hang out with you guys and chat too. Chat's always been great. This was a good show. We kind of celebrated chat, just answering the questions. It's one of my favorite shows like that, to do that. So thanks everybody for that. And remember, if you're getting the pirate bugs, they work great. They're awesome, but use them in veg only. Don't fucking get swindled and use them in flower.
or there could be some that do not have the diapause behavior. Some
right, maybe there's a specific species or something that performs in flower that we haven't heard of yet. But yeah, other than that, keep growing, guys. That's how we win. Growers love.
Peace out.
See y'all next week, man.
Peace out, and thank you, buddy.
Grower love, Spartan.
Always a pleasure.
And I would say educate yourself on all those beneficial insects, because some of the spider mite predators that are they have the exact same phenomenon. They're not really useful under 12 and 12. They do go into that diapause.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, it might not have been specifically copper that first did it, but I knew that there were some people somewhere at some point were able to basically breed out the diapause trait in some predatory mites, and I think also certain other predatory insects too. So it's it might also be true for some of the Orius minute pirate
Matthew,
bugs.
is anybody doing any kind of experimentation on GMOing predator mites to be more, predatory
Or
whatever you
pesticide
want to say?
resistant?
Yeah, there's a European Union initiative called Biocombs or something like that. I forget what the acronym stood for specifically, but it was a group that they were trying to do a lot of research into biocontrol behavior and sort of optimize them. Like, for example, for a long time, Persimolis mites have trouble in tomato crops with really, a lot of hair, a lot of trichomes, a lot of them. Yeah, and it's not just the glandular trichomes, but also the sort of strigose or sort of stiff, almost like like beard hair can be sort of like that, a very dense, prickly, that also degraded their efficacy because it's kind of like they have to spend more energy, just going across the landscape,
Right.
so
Well,
to speak.
the plant makes that to try and keep the bad bugs off of it, right?
Well, but it's omnidirectional.
Right. It doesn't. Right. It doesn't make it.
But you're right.
beneficial.
But you're right. The
So
beneficials also have to
yeah,
contend in
they
that
have to-
space too.
And that was another thing I learned the hard way, that some of those beneficial predatory mites can't traverse the trichomes very well at all.
Yeah, they're not very good at it. And also, like,
Certain ones, yeah.
they might not get stuck necessarily, but over time, it's kind of like there's this
Mountains
cumulative
decline.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Or the webbing, if the spider mites get far enough along, the webbing can prevent the actual
The
predators
good
from
bugs from getting them. Yeah.
getting in there.
Seen
Yeah,
that. I've witnessed that looking under the microscope myself. So yeah.
it's crazy, man.
And-
Nature is wild. It's like a back and forth. And one of the things I would recommend personally is, if you do ever have it to the point where you have webs, is physically removing them. Many different ways of going about it. I've seen people vacuum their plant. I'm not a big fan of that personally. I use like chopsticks,
Yeah.
and I go around and I pull them off physically. And you could even use like your fingers, depending on what stage of the plant is in. But physical removal is, with a lot of pests that you can see and things like that with webbing, can be effective, at least for the start.
Yeah.
And then releasing or spraying, doing your knockdown spray, and then depending on whether or not it's going to be friendly with whatever you're following up with. But sometimes you don't even have to spray. Like my barber, he got spider mites. He just soaked the barbecue skewers with like Lost Coast plant therapy, and he pulled off all the webbing, and then he released a shit ton of I think it was Californicus or some other predator that did eat spider mites, and they completely wiped out the whole population. And it was just in a small tent, and he got way more than he needed, but it was it rescued his harvest. It got him his first crop.
I wouldn't put words in Matthew's mouth, but I would think he would suggest scouting before there's even a chance of webbing to occur, because you should avoid that. That should be
1000% yes.
Yeah.
True.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
The discipline and I guess the ability in general, the availability to do exactly that is like number one thing. Can't talk about it enough. Trying to find the problem before it becomes a big problem. Obviously doing things to keep it from being a problem preventatively. But a lot of it just comes down to showing up and executing, even when you're kind of tired and you don't want to, which is tough. I get it. But yeah, it's way less costly for all kinds of things.
I just saw somebody or not even just for pests, but it is a dual as crop scouting. They run a lot of tester genetics and new seeds, and they've come across a lot of herms. So to avoid them spreading through their garden, they look every 3 days is their thing in flower, especially in early flower. And you could even do it more, but like diligently look, like spreading the plants apart, looking inside. They have a flashlight on their head and they're looking down in there. They have magnifying glasses out. Like it can be one single little pollen sac that throws off a little bit of pollen, and you've got X amount of seeds per gram ounce in the grow. So being diligent about that kind of thing can save you from having those pains, and it can also help you identify, oh, I've got spider mites, and instead of waiting for them to have webbing, I'm going to start knocking them down as soon as possible. Maybe you do a spray because you don't have predators on hand. Okay, and then that time that you've knocked them down, by the time the predators get there, maybe enough time has elapsed, or sign up on shameless plug for, and it's not shameless because he's my buddy and he's not the one doing it, but shout out to Zenthanol's Patreon. Hit him up. It's like $1 a month. You could get access. In that situation, it's really going to be nice to be able to message somebody and be like, hey, I think this is what I have. Can you confirm? And like, what should I do? And like, how long is long enough? And those types of things are nice to have answered depending on what product that you have available to you as the knockdown, because different states, different countries vary as far as availability and cost and what you're going to feel comfortable using. So consulting with a legit professional who's got like over a decade of experience is going to potentially save your grow and make you feel a lot more reassured, because I know how people get when they get panicked. They'll try freaking anything. They'll go to the Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, Walmart, and they'll start spraying stuff that they shouldn't be spraying. That's going to do more damage to their crop than the actual pests would have. And sometimes it might not even be a pest. I've seen many cases where people are like,
best thing is to do
it's
nothing.
beneficial.
Yeah.
And if you do everything, you don't know what works or doesn't work also.
That's a good point.
Yeah, let me show you this one clip. Speaking of harms, that harms will hide on you. And this is a perfect example I like showing people when they're or just in general. So it looks normal, it's all female, but right underneath that leaf, hidden between all that male
There
flower,
you
see it?
There you go.
So, and if someone wasn't really looking, it just looks like it looks all female from there, but
that's mendacious.
So
Is
easy
that
to
just
miss.
genetic, or was something happened to provoke that?
It was just genetics. This is like, I have a whole folder. That's what I was telling people. That's why I started making my own seeds. I was finding these, and I was finding too many hermaphrodites in the seeds I was buying. Or actually my buddy was buying most of them, but he was buying them and they were from legit companies, and there was quite a few herms. So definitely scouting and keeping an eye on, go over your plants with a fine-tooth comb. It's a good idea no matter what. Even if they are trusted people, trusted genetics, it could happen to the best of stable seeds. A herm could pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and like weird stuff happens with soil, different mixes, and even in cocoa, like the hormone levels of the plant can get thrown off if you start. A lot of people like to introduce new things. They hear about the new hot whatever, and they want to try, whatever product it is. And it might be just enough to stress your plant into throwing that single nanner. And that single nanner, I've heard that like a thimble full of pollen can contain up to like 1 million grains, and a thimble's not that much larger than a pollen sac. You could probably fit like a couple pollen sacs inside of a thimble, but that just goes to show like each grain can make a seed. So you could have a ton of seeds potentially. So you really want to
one
close
male
attention.
flower with the wind blowing right will get a lot of seeds on your crop.
Yeah, and we try to set it up so the wind is blowing right in our tents, right? So like
it's the perfect like storm of shitty situations when you do get the herm, because the aeration is blowing everything around, so it starts hitting a little bit of all the pistils. So like you lightly at best have pollinated everything in the room, or heavily pollinated everything in the room. So it even like when I try to do a separate pollination in like one grow area, the pollen is so it drifts, it flies through the air. It's almost invisible to the naked eye. Like what you can see and what's in the air are two different things. And I had carbon filters, separation. I sprayed water and everything that you're supposed to do, but I still had this was the first time I was making velvet punch seeds. I only planned to do like one plant pollinated. I ended up pollinating 4 plants because that's the way the cookie crumbles. You gotta live and learn. But pollen's crazy.
You think I can play in here? I kind of want to use the small tent to create seeds of my own and start playing and see what works and what doesn't work. but I've been afraid because I have the other tents. But I was thinking if I sink it and have nothing in flower, for instance,
Mhm.
and give like 2 weeks, put them in flower like only a week after collecting the pollen, and spray everything. Will it be okay still? Spray everything with water, I mean, but not.
You
I
can
would say it
you
would
can get
help
away
with
with it. It's
me, though.
difficult
Yeah.
though. It's difficult. I would assume that on that crop that you're making seeds, the small crop, just in your head, accept the fact that maybe some of the other plants are going to get pollinated that run. And if that's not okay with you, then I wouldn't do it
You mean
because
the other tents? No,
I
it's all for
agree.
me.
large
So
likelihood,
okay.
large
If you
likelihood of
keep
cross contamination. Because as professional as you might think you're going to be with the situation, even the professionals have cross contamination when they set things up properly.
Yeah.
So even if you go HEPA filter, carbon filter, whatever, forced air where it's like
Yeah,
it's
negative
negative
pressure is
pressure,
what I was going to say. Negative pressure in the tank.
there's
But
ways to do it, but it's still
it's
you're
not 100%
gonna
guaranteed for sure. Yes.
it's a
I mean, even if
risk
I have a
unless you
little bit
literally
of
build out
seeds,
like MedGrower One built out like a chamber, like a wooden isolated box that's like a whole separate room. He built a physical room with like rooms within it that have separate layers of security. And I'm sure he still probably has pollen get out to his,
but you're talking
unseeded
about
area.
like little seeds here and there, or like big contaminant, because little seeds here and there I don't mind, and even maybe
Yeah,
I
little,
create a good genetic from these little seeds here and there. It's for me
yeah.
to
If you're
smoke, so I just have to
should
take
be
the seeds out.
So I would make a really tiny male, the smallest male, like a solo cup male. Don't grow a male in a 1 gallon pot. It'll grow way too much pollen. Just do
Solocop was the idea.
Yeah, and that'll produce enough to pollinate your whole entire place if you're not careful. So even that, you take one branch of that male, let it die or dry off, and then when it's super dry, you can go and let it shake around in that room that you're trying to pollinate. But um, be as
Is,
diligent as you can. That's all I'll say. But
is it not better to take that dry branch to the other side of the house, to the toilet, and pollinate it to a
that's a good,
Ziploc
if you have the
bag, and then
option.
close the
Yeah, grow
bag
the
and
males
keep it all
someplace totally different.
safe?
Yeah, if you
And then
Different
grow
both
the
area.
male, different area, and then
If
bring
you're,
the
some people
female
do them
that you want
outside,
to
like Smiley.
impregnate to a different spot. That's the best. Grow the male a
No,
different area.
this I cannot do, but I can
Alright.
collect the dry branch in another place so that the pollen doesn't go all over the
Right,
place. That's what I mean.
That's your best
And you
bet
know what
for
else?
sure. And do the
You can
pollinating
do?
in that area that you're collecting it. Bring if you can. Oh, you're probably not gonna be able to bring the plant actually, but you
Be
collect the
careful
pollen in
of
an area that's not going to have a lot of wind movement. Get it all
You're going to
settled.
end up with some stray seeds. You're going to be able to mitigate it and limit it, but you're going to end up
Yeah,
with some
limit
stray
it.
seeds.
And be careful, like
Yeah.
rubbing your arm on the male or any of your clothing or your hair, all that. It sticks to it. It's that pollen's like is well, I don't know. I think
Yeah, I
thinking
know.
is that it's electronically static almost. That it'll
And wear a
stick to
mask
you.
when you collect the
And
pollen.
yeah.
You don't want to inhale that shit in your nose and throat. It's not fun. But we have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to pass it to you, Dog
Oh,
Doctor, to give
wow.
your final thoughts and shout out before we wrap this thing up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was the one delaying this. I'm sorry. And
Oh, no.
thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure and an honor. Thanks to all the panel, to the chat. It's really, really cool. You guys and everything, all the knowledge. And even when it's just not knowledge, it's just talking about whatever we're talking about. It's really cool. And I really appreciate it. I am Dog Doctor. You can find me on Instagram or in Grow Diaries as Dog Doctor and Dog Doctor Official. I would like to thank you Aptus Islands for the food and nutrition to my plants. I really think that the reason that I see them so beautiful, it's the nutrition I give them combined with everything else, of course. Thank you all. Rose love. Much appreciated.
Thank you for coming. Great talking, great questions, and great work always. Thank you for showing off the garden and letting us be critical and show you where we think it could possibly improve, because a lot of people are really negative to any feedback. They're like,
No,
I'm doing everything
please.
perfectly. But I think if you're going to come on, we're going to try our best to help you improve where we think we can. So I'm always thankful for you and Oil Town Oil, who came on earlier. Thankful for everybody who's shown off their garden on this show tonight and in the past. So thank you guys all. And next up, Dr. MJ.
Hey guys, I am Dr. MJ Coco. I enjoyed the show. So I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. It's going to be Thanksgiving before we get to see each other again. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for this show. I'm thankful for all the friends that I've met through here and, everybody in the chat and the whole community. So grow a love to everybody. Check us out. Check out my YouTube channel, Dr. MJ Coco. I'm on Instagram, and of course my website, cocoforcannabis.com. Sign up for our New Year's Grow Challenge, and we're gonna start that on New Year's coming up. But happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
A lot of people will say Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see lots of those posts going around, and people getting nice and blazed up, and even medicating their turkeys and things like that. And I agree with you, Doc. It's been great just doing the show. I'm thankful for it as well. I'm thankful to have met you in person, as well as Matthew and some of the other guys on the panel, and look forward to hopefully meeting all of you someday in person, and just being able to do this work together. And me and Doc even got to do a little bit of work outside the show in person, which was really cool to make that connection. So thankful for all that, and also thankful for Matthew Gates and all of his great IPM knowledge. So Matthew, final thoughts and shout out.
Wealth beyond measure, everyone. I hope that you have a great time coming up for the holidays. If you have holidays, if you don't, that's okay. I still hope that you have a good time. And I hope that it has been informative. I really appreciate being able to have this go between various people and various situations. It keeps me sharp. I think it hones everyone else too. So you can't dislike that. If you'd like to do more of that kind of thing for yourself, you can find me at my website, zenthanol.com. You can also check me out on my social media at SyncAngel on Twitter and also on Instagram. And again, if you're very interested, you can also check me out on my Patreon, which I dropped a link in the chat. And you can just subscribe for $1 a month, and you can get into my Discord. We actually recently had a bunch of people, asking questions that if they had done the wrong thing, even at a cultivation facility, it would have been pretty costly. So it was definitely a cost-benefit move for them. So anyways, I just want to make sure people have the safest plant growing experience possible, no matter what.
I greatly appreciate that. And I also liked that post that you put up where it was talking about percentages that can be lost. And at a certain point, it could be a total loss. It's like 10% a week or something, that really puts in perspective how important IPM is, staying on top of it, hitting it early. So very thankful that you're able to share that information and get to the people. Look at that. We got some 50 strains of green over there with the American one. Cheers to you, Tao. And you're last and certainly not least, but I'll do a little spotlight there for people to see, because normally you're not on cam.
There you go.
I knew I was coming up, so I wanted to get ready. And I've been kind of lame on the shout outs. I want to shout out Jack Greenstalk for being the extension. I can't get the word, but the great host that he is. And shout out his book, 50 Strains of Green. There's plenty of pictures, and it's just a really good book. And everyone should get themselves a copy and then prepare themselves for the 50 Strains of Purple, which is coming up. And shout out to everyone on the panel, to Dog Doctor Official, to Oil Town Oil, and everyone in chat. It's always good hanging out, talking. This one went really by quick, and I had a great time. So shout out to everyone. And every week I'm going to get a shout out to someone that deserves it that I've been lacking on. So thank you, Jack, for all the work you do. Yeah.
Thank you. And trying my best to finish up 50 Strains of Purple. It's really, really information packed, and doing the best I can. That's the first edition. The American one's got. I shout out to Ancient Soul Grown on Instagram. He hit me up because he was a purchaser of the first edition. He's like, hey man, I do formatting and I'd love to help you out with the book. So the second edition, those photos are even they fill out the page even better, and they're a little more spaced tightly together. And that's how 50 Strands of Purple will be and stuff moving forward. So thankful for him, and thankful for Sequence_MI, who is one of the hosts of the Michigan Grow Show, who helped me out with the cover. He designed the cover and made it so that it wraps all the way around. It's like a perfect cover. So really cool stuff. He worked in the publishing industry for a little while, I guess. So he knows about that kind of thing. And it's really cool that the community can come together and support each other on that type of stuff. So I'm thankful for everybody who's made it possible, and looking forward to dropping the next book, hopefully by the end of the year. And if you want to find me or my information, I'm at Jack Greenstock on Cannabis, which we didn't talk about this week. The cannabis social medias, like the thing that I mentioned at the top with the social club coming back online. But you could also find me Jack_Greenstock on Twitter, and jackgreenstock47@gmail.com if you'd like to email me off of social media. And like Tao said, if you want a copy of the book, just go to 50 Strains, STRAINS.com. If you'd like a copy of 50 Strains of Green, and 50 Strains of Purple will be coming soon. So thank you all so much for coming. And I really look forward to seeing you next week with some science talk.
Grow love, everyone.
Grow love, everybody. Thank you.